Shabbat Shalom. When I decided to go to rabbinical school in the United States, I was living in Jerusalem at the time. And at that time, did not feel like an obvious choice what I was going to do with my life. I was trying to decide my next steps. I was working as a journalist. And how do you make such a decision? Should I stay in Israel or should I go to the United States? Should I go into a whole long training program that would take years to complete, which it did? What do I want for my life, for my career, at this crossroads? What should I do? Where should I go? I was unsure. And many years of thinking and of seeking had to come together in that moment. But it was a very big moment. And I was trying to figure out which way to go. And all of us have those periods in our lives where we're trying to decide which way to go, and so many different decisions and struggling. How do we keep going forward? What is the best decision? When is the right time? When is the right time to make that move? Maybe we can say as well that these past few years, the whole world has been stuck in this kind of question as well. Which way to go forward? What kind of world will we be? A global world, or a world where the global order is in retreat and strong nations come up instead? What kind of democracy are we going to live? How do we respond to climate change in Israel and this nation, all of humanity? How do we answer such profound questions that cause us such soul churning? And it's not clear always what the answer would be. If not, we'd already be in that path. So how we decide. Thinking about our parsha, we do not have the benefit of what the children of Israel had in this parsha. They had a cloud of glory, as we read about this morning. They had a cloud of glory, and when the cloud of glory moved, they know, well, it's time to move on. And when the cloud of glory stopped, according to Torah, well, they knew this is a time to encamp. They were guided. As the Torah says, Al Pi Hashem, by God's word, they encamp. By God's word, they set out again. Yechanu. So we have to figure it out for ourselves. And yes, perhaps it's not all that different how we have to approach this process and how they did in the Torah. And so even though they had this divine guidance, the cloud moving whenever they needed to move, telling them when to go, where to go, it also required a lot of faith for them as well. Because even though they had the guidance, they never knew, well, how long would we remain here in this camp? And they had to wait. They kept looking up. We can imagine at the sky, when is this cloud going to start moving so we can set out again? And other times they were traveling for endless long days, wondering when would the cloud finally stop. And they had to set aside their mental noise and find that clarity within to say, I'm going to have to follow this cloud as best I can. And the only guidance they had was every time the cloud would set out, Moses would say, we say, Vayhi bin so Aaron, as he prepared the Aaron, the ark, to set out, he would say, Kuma Adonai. We know this from the Torah service. Advance, O Adonai, may your enemies be scattered, and may your foes flee before you. And everyone would start to go out. So they had to set out with confidence. Whatever was before them, they had to find that confidence. And they had to believe that even though they might not be ready at that moment to set out, there was time to face their enemies, internal and external, and that they would be scattered and their foes would flee and they would be victorious. And when they returned, they also had to follow Moses' lead. And Moses would say, Shuva Adonai, return, O Adonai, you who are Israel's myriads of thousands. And then also the end of our Torah service. And then they would have to put aside any misgivings. They were ready to continue traveling on. They were ready to face their next battle. But that moment, it was time to just sit down and think and contemplate and to stay put, not to surge ahead. And for us, as we struggle with all of these questions that every one of us faces many times over our lives, as we do as a society, as a world, humanity. Perhaps first what we have to do is ask the question in the first place. Well, what do my highest values dictate of me at this moment? What does my highest understanding of morality dictate to me? What does God want from me at this moment? What does God want from me at this moment in my life? And what is morally right? And how can I follow the ark, the Aron? How can I follow the tradition? How can I follow the Torah? What would God want me to do? And then when we do go out, we have to go out as they did, with confidence, feeling this must be the moment for it. We are going out as the ark went out, saying, "Rise, may all of our foes be scattered, all of our foes internal and external," and have faith in that courage. When the children of Israel were traveling through the desert, and they reached the foe, which happened many times throughout, guided there by the cloud, no less, they had to know that that moment there was a reason why they were facing this enemy. It was part of their journey. And just as with us, when we face our battles, to realize that this is a battle that we too have to engage with for ourselves, for our world, looking at climate, looking at the divisiveness of our times. In Israel, knowing this moment is a moment of deciding a new trajectory and what the makeup of the nation will be going forward, and knowing that there is a real problem, a battle that must be understood within the country about the divisions between religious and secular, and how the growing ultra-Orthodox population can be integrated, how their way of life and their needs can be brought into the whole while creating a fair system for everyone. And in our Jewish lives as well, this period in history for American Jewish life, how do we meet it so that we have a next generation of shul goers, the next generation of people who support Jewish life in this country? In our conservative movement, we had to face our own battles before. And those first generation of conservative Jewish leaders in this country who saw the traditions that they were there to conserve, and summing up a very different world, a world where men and women were mixing and women were part of all of life. And they understood we have to make changes. And when women first came onto the bima in conservative synagogues around the world, there was some resistance in every congregation. But eventually they understood, we understood, this is what we have to do to go forward with the arc of our times. So we are once again having to think, how do we adapt to our times and go with our highest values, thinking, what would God want from us at this moment? While trying to balance everything as we do the climate change crisis, as we go forward against the clock, trying to understand how to maintain economic health and change all the behaviors with compassion. How do we advance democracy in our age and time? How is it different than it was 20, 30 years ago? How do we fine-tune our own understanding of why it is so precious to us? How do we bring out the highest values? How do we ask, what does God want from us? And all those small and great questions. And in our lives as well, we think about, how do we take care of our loved relatives as they age? How do we help our children through crises? How do we bring our highest values through all of it? In the end, in our parsha, the very beginning of our parsha, as the children of Israel are preparing to set out, this is the name of our parsha, Behalotecha, as they were raising the menorah, is literally the translation. When you cause the menorah to rise up to be lit. And in the end, what are we trying to do? We're just trying to raise up the menorah for that light to shine. And when we find ourselves in the wilderness and we're wondering which way to go, do we go left? Do we go right? Is it the wrong way or the right way? Perhaps in a sense, it doesn't actually matter. And what is important is that we keep trying to lift up the menorah. And the Hasidic master Rabbi Nachman of Breslov would say, the menorah represents everything. The seven branches of the menorah represented the 7 Sefirot, the essential qualities of the universe that we're always trying to refine. It represents the ears and the hands and the mouth. We're trying to uplift who we are, how we see the world, to see the Tselem Elohim, the image of God, and all other human beings. Find how we hear, to always hear words that inspire us and feed our souls, that make us go towards goodness, to uplift our hands, all the actions we do in the world, the small ones and the big ones. Because in the end, these periods of questioning can lead to breakthroughs, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes we just continue on going. In our own lives, opportunities present themselves, doors open, and sometimes we walk full through, sometimes just a foot. What we can't do is that really on some end, what we're trying to do is just lift up that menorah. And the details of this stop and of that stop are maybe not that crucial. There were many in the journeys of the travels of the children of Israel. In the end, even if we're unsure, if we're headed in the right direction, and even if we do not know if we even set out in time, and even if we're not sure if we encamped in the right place or not, or we lost some time here, or we lost some time there, as long as we're trying to bring our highest values and trying to raise the menorah, trying to connect to our tradition, our Torah, our God, keep asking, well, what would you want from me? Then we are crying out, Kuma, Adonai, v'yafutzu oivecha, advance, O Adonai, may your enemies be scattered. We're breaking through all of our enemies, internal and external. We're living with purpose, and we're bringing our menorah high up to illumine the whole world. Shabbat Shalom.